Welcome to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food is Medicine, and naturally a health, wellness, and mindfulness enthusiast. I believe that happiness is a choice, and I built my company upon this ethos. This show is a platform where we will discuss all things health, wellness, and mindfulness in hopes of inspiring you further on your journey. We will be sharing inspiring stories, health, wellness, and mindfulness hacks, as well as anything else pertaining to living your best choice life. My hope is that you may hear something on every episode of this podcast that will genuinely be of value in your life. Welcome back to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery and author of Plant Food is Medicine. This episode, as well as every other episode, is sponsored by Choice Juicery. So if you want to support the show, you can do so by visiting us online at choicejuicery.com and shop our online store where we're shipping all kinds of amazing products all over the nation. Everything from our elixir line to our protein powder, our daily greens powder, and our new Rehydrate Plus, which is amazing. It's actually naturally occurring mineral and vitamin C, unlike the others, which are synthetics. All the other competitors out there are serving up synthetic ingredients, and we don't do that at Choice, and it's all organic. And so you can get this baby online or at any of our stores here in sunny San Diego. I'm really excited about this guest we have coming on today. Christina Daley is a dear friend of mine. She's also the owner and founder of Astea Collective, the yoga studio that I've been attending for years, what got me back into yoga after a 10-year hiatus from yoga. So I'm really excited to dive in and learn more about Christina, what moved her to start Astea. And I want to talk about the community she's been building. She's done such an incredible job of building this beautiful community, and I want to hear more about all of that. So without further ado, Christina, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yay.
Yeah, it's been fun getting to know you better over the last few years. And then now, I'm just so impressed with what you're doing. And I love that you're part of our community. It's so beautiful.
I love it. Likewise. The more I've gotten to know you, I've known you for years, but I feel like I'm getting to know you on a deeper level lately. And just the more I've gotten to know you, the more I realize how similar our backgrounds are. And that's always surprised me. I find that with people that grew up in rough backgrounds, it's not very often you see them come out of that and thrive and just become the best version of themselves. That doesn't always happen. And when it does, it's something to take note of. And so I love that we have that. The more I know you, the more I'm like, oh, me too. Oh, wait, me too. You had that too. Me too.
I know, isn't it kind of funny?
Yeah.
But it's also it's nice.
It is.
Relatability.
Very true. Yeah. Very true. So I want to hear a little bit about that. Tell us about your story for those of you those that are listening that don't know your story or your background. Tell us a little bit about your story and then kind of what led you to discovering yoga and, started this community building that you've been up to.
Sure. I think I'll start because, to be honest, I don't think I was truly aware or really understood how impactful my childhood had been until I was in my 30s and really got into yoga, and I was starting to unravel a lot of energy, and I was crying in Shavasana all the time. And I was like, what is happening? Because when I first started doing yoga, I was one of those people that would leave in Shavasana,
Yeah.
It was that idea. And when I look back now, it's that idea of being still and vulnerable I was running from, but I was always just saying I'm just here for the workout. But I think ultimately, subconsciously, I was running,
of course. Yeah.
Getting out of there, because being still, being open, eyes closed, and really allowing those thoughts, that presence to be there was something I didn't want to be, because I was still hiding from a lot of what I had experienced as youth. And I remember in my relationship with my daughter's father, it was really unhealthy. And I decided to go back to yoga, not for the physical, but this time I was okay, I need to get back in touch with myself. And I was crying every Shavasana, and I was noticing just as the tears were exiting, I was becoming lighter and lighter, but I was noticing how dim I was on the inside, and how I'd been closed off and hiding who I was and what I stood for, what I represented, due to just years of insecurities and past traumas and bad relationships and just all the things that just, you keep piling on, that you kind of own as you, this is something's wrong with you, right? And so there's this desire to close off and to hide. And I started unraveling, and I remember I was sitting in class, and I don't even remember what the teacher said, but she's take this 8-week journey with me. And I said, I walked out, I was bawling. And I said, take my money, I'm going. I don't know where you're going, but take my money. She was like, well, it's teacher training. And I was like, okay. I could not ever stand in front of people. I could never be a teacher. I just had all of these things. And
what were you doing at that time? Like, what was Christina doing for work pre
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom, but I also owned a meal prep company.
Okay.
So I was making food for people weekly.
Okay.
Just like healthy little single meals that I would deliver food on Sundays.
Okay.
So I had a handful. Actually, I had more. I had about 25 clients.
Okay. But that's very much like behind the scenes and interacting one-on-one, definitely not standing in front of a room.
No.
Yeah. Totally different.
Yes. But I said to myself, I went home and I was like, you know what? I felt so called to just walk out of that room and say, take me, that I like have to follow this. You know, like something inside of me is like, so I went and met her for coffee. Anyway, so as I started getting into my teaching journey, I started to like really unravel just how much of my childhood and the experiences that I had and just the lifestyle that I grew up in, how much it had affected so much of my adult life. I mean, early adult life. I'm not old.
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
We're like 40.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it was interesting. I grew up, you know, both of my parents when I was really little were addicts. My mom, you know, one night dropped us off at my grandma's house and checked herself into rehab. And so she was, you know, in there for a few months and we could see her every Sunday. And my dad never opted to that route. So my dad actually eventually passed away from alcohol and drug addiction.
I'm so sorry.
But just that, you know, I think even though she did the best, my mom was a single mom with 3 kids. So it was really, she was working a ton when trying to get her life back on track. So we spent a lot of, I feel like I kind of supported raising my siblings quite a bit because I was the eldest. And then I've just had other experiences. I think that has affected how I kind of showed up in romantic relationships.
Of course, yeah.
And then we moved around a lot when I was little. So I never really developed solid friendships in a sense. And I felt like, I also think maybe I was always afraid to get too close to anyone because everybody would eventually be gone, like the structures that I grew up in.
Or disappoint you or exactly.
So it really inhibited me from creating deep relationships with people for a really long time, which is interesting because now I have this like amazing community and I've never felt so connected to myself first and foremost, but just like the ability to see so many beautiful faces every single day and have these really strong friendships and relationships with people now and really cherishing the experiences that I'm having. And more importantly, just like continuously allowing myself to just find grace for, you know, whatever it is that I have been through and been able to shapeshift into like this light.
Totally. And it's like an onion, right? We're always pulling back the layers and there's always another layer and we pull it back and we're always learning and growing. I don't think the work will ever be done.
No.
But take me back to yoga teacher training because I am like so fascinated. I hear so many people talk about how much I know people that went and they're not yoga teachers, but they talk about how much that yoga teacher training impacted them or changed their lives. And so I'm always curious, like for you, clearly a lot of healing took place in that. When I think about yoga teacher training, I think about like you're sitting in class and they're teaching you how to do the flow and like, you know, what the different things are called, the different positions and postures and what have you. So, but yet counter to that, I'm always hearing people say how life-changing yoga teacher training is for them. So help me with that disconnect. Like what goes on there? Because I've obviously never been and I'm so curious to hear.
Sure. I think it's essentially you're learning another language, right? And although, yes, of course, there's Sanskrit, but you notice you take class all the time, people don't use it, right? But you are learning how to teach people how to get into these poses. And ultimately, it's an uncomfortable position to be in when you walk into that room. And it's funny because if I said, you've probably done child's pose like 100 million times in your lifetime. But if I said, Nastasha, I'm going to get on the floor and you cue me in a child's pose, you would probably be like, I have no idea what to say right now. And it's just a fascinating thing that our bodies do it all the time. But when you have to communicate it to guide a whole room full of people, it starts to become like, oh my God, it's like you've never done it before in your life. You know? I remember when I was in teacher training, this is so silly, but teacher training, when it was my turn to like get up and like practice teach, I would cry or like hyperventilate because I was like so terrified of speaking in front of people. I think that's another thing. that's such a worldwide fear, right? Probably the number one fear is speaking, like public speaking.
Yeah.
And you're forced to just get in front of people time
Mhm.
and time again and speak something that you don't really know about, but you're trying to articulate it like you do.
Yeah.
So I think the discomfort that it creates allows you this deeper sense of like vulnerability that it takes to really drop in. Because once you're in there,
Mhm.
you're, I mean, people, I've never had anybody like quit training. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like you're in, and no
Yeah.
matter how intimidating it is, how uncomfortable it is, you just find a way to make it through. And then there's also that idea of coming into a room with 10, 12, 15, 20 other people who are in the exact same spot, and you're all opening up and just getting deeply vulnerable with each other. So it creates these really solid and really unique and special relationships. Like I find that I've led so many teacher trainings and been a part of so many. And at this point, I feel like I've seen so many relationships where people like live together or best friends still, and it's been like 10 years or something.
Wow.
So it creates, that.
Yeah.
And then there's also just yoga in itself, I think it's a it's a channel to self, right? It's far beyond the poses. I mean, the poses are great to move the body, but ultimately yoga as a lifestyle is more about just getting deeper acquainted with yourself, right? And like finding a deeper sense of trust in self and this intimacy with self that allows you to feel seen, heard, and like without the judgment, without the
Yeah.
expectations, but just like accepting you for who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a
Yeah.
continuous practice.
Of
I mean,
course.
we have to
Yeah.
wake up every day and like I mean, even if we're like, oh, I'm not insecure about that anymore, but then
Yeah.
something else pops
Of
up and I'm like,
course.
wait, where did this come from?
Of
Like, what
course.
happened,
Yeah. It kind of for me it's always like I get put in the seat of awareness in yoga. Like that little voice inside of our head that's like, oh, you're good or you're not good, or, like comparing and all those things that are going on. I always just identified as that. And with yoga, it's like, I see that, but that's not me. And it's like, I get the continuous invitation throughout the practice to like keep shedding that and
Yeah.
like, and witnessing it like rising and falling, but not like attaching to it, if you
Sure.
will. And it's interesting because like the first stint that I had with yoga was pre-Cora, and I got into it for a few years. Like you, I have older ones and then the younger one. And so I think when my older two were, I don't know, like around the ages of like 10 to somewhere in there, 10, 12, whatever, I found yoga for the first time. I'd been invited by a friend, and I took this class. It was at a studio that's no longer around in Carlsbad, and I walked in and I didn't know what to expect. I just thought like it's a workout. You go and you work out. And it was physically challenging, but I just remember this part where I don't remember what the hip opener was, but it was a hip opener, and the teacher came over and like, pressed on me. So I had to like open my hips more, like the little adjustment that they do. And I just burst into tears, not because I was in pain, but like they said after the class, they came up to me like, yeah, our hips store a lot of emotion. And I was like, that was weird. I don't know what that was, but that was weird. And it freaked me out. But I kept going, and I cried a lot in that period, and I started to kind of fall in love with it. And then I got pregnant with Cora. So then I took a break for a few years and then didn't wander back onto a mat until our mutual friend, Christina, invited me to your studio, and it was like coming home in a weird way, like both the studio that you created, but also because the energy, all the people that go to Estea, I find just like, even though I'm not very good at getting involved and like, I'm not great at building community, I'm learning to get better at it, but I've always felt so welcome there, and everyone is so friendly, and it's just such a great environment that you've created.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then, and then like finding my mat again after so many years, and yoga evolved in the years that I was out. I like came to my first class and I was like, what the hell just happened to me? It was like, the intensity was just so different from what I had remembered, but it was just like a newfound love. So I'm absolutely loving this new journey that I'm on with it. It's been a couple of years now since I found your studio, and I've been going religiously there. So I love it.
Yeah, the yoga world has definitely evolved. It's kind of funny to me too that if like Southern California in particular has a reputation for just being like way more intense than any other region.
Really?
Or Colorado or Florida or something. It's different. And I don't know what is down here. We're just all like extreme sport.
Right. I know. Is that what it is?
I'd like to say we're just flooded with creativity
Yeah.
here, and there's this, I think, a lot of, at least especially at Astea, but I see this with yoga teachers all over. There's so many amazing yoga teachers in San Diego,
Of course.
right? But at Astea in particular, they have creative freedom, right? So every class is up to them, because I feel like, I mean, as long as it's safe and
Of
it
course.
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like the more that they're teaching from their heart and something they're connected to, the more it's going to translate to the students like this more beautiful experience, right? As opposed to me walking in saying like, okay, these are the guidelines and you have to teach like this. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I totally understand from like a corporate perspective, when you need to have a uniform look, why that doesn't work, right? But because we're standalone, I'm good with that. So I think like it's been really cool to see the way that people translate yoga through the way that they sequence, right? And like what it means to them, and how they, because yoga means something different to all of us. You know, and so I think that's like been really cool to watch that translation of their heart in yoga and what it looks like when they show up for the students.
Totally.
Like how that lands for you guys.
Totally. And as a student of that, I felt that I have been going there for a couple of years now. And I can honestly say I've never done the same flow. Like I've never done the same flow twice. Every time I ever go to a class, it's always a little bit different. Sometimes it's completely different. But even if I take like, you know, your class one week and then take the same class again next week, it's like the flow is different. There'll be some new transition or something thrown in there, and or oftentimes it's very different, you know, it's a completely different flow. And I personally love that, because in the past when I was going to yoga, it was the same flow every time. My body, once I remember and know what's coming, I go into like, I'm in like, you know, warrior pose, and I'm like, oh man, I got to send that email later. And then I, you know, go into another pose and I'm like, oh God, did I return that call? Like I'm in my head and I'm not in my body, because I already know what to do physically. So I don't have to be that present. And, you know, maybe some will say, well, you know, do the work, Nastasha, be more present. But in the classes that I go to, they're always different. So I have to be fully present. Otherwise, I'll get lost. And so it forces me to be completely present. And I think that's why I crave it so much and why I love it so much, because there's not a lot of things in my life that force me to be present. And I desire that, I crave that feeling a lot, because I have a very active mind that's always going. You know, we're master multitaskers as business owners and moms and all the things. So I'm always strategizing and planning and like 5 steps ahead of like, what do I have to do next? And it's so nice to like be in a space where I get to like hang that up and just be completely in my body for an hour. It's such a beautiful feeling.
Yes, I agree. It is, my brain is on overload. To be able to step into a space where your presence, and to go back to your word, like awareness is heightened, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's where the change happens ultimately for us as humans, is the awareness, right? Because once we, and I think there's this, sometimes on the mat we can be very judgmental of ourselves, right? Like, oh, yesterday I could do a handstand and today I can, or yesterday I could do a balancing pose and today I'm falling all over the place, right? So there's this element of judgment that I think, natural human reaction, right? But I think the yoga practice kind of teaches you to turn it into curiosity instead of, and just introspection instead of judgment, right? And figuring out like, okay, today is a new day, and why I'm feeling X or Y or whatnot, and not holding on to it or labeling as like, this is you, but just understanding it's temporary, right? And then we can just drop into that awareness. And I think when we create awareness for ourselves, that's when we start to find clarity within ourselves, right? And clarity is where we start to make conscious decisions in alignment with ourselves, because we're more rooted in like ourselves in that moment, rather than, you know, a little distracted or off the whim or off what the external world's saying, you know? So the yoga practice for me has been that like beautiful sense of just like being within in a very like solid way.
I love that. And also the invitation is always there to like, take this off your mat and into the world. You know, like it's so easy to like get off the mat and then like go back into that like stress, frantic, get everything done mode. But I tend to, on the days that I practice, I'm more peaceful throughout my day. I'm less reactive. I'm less like, I get that, you know, the house is on fire email or whatever. I'm less like to like freak out. And I'm like, okay, you know, just I'm in a more tranquil state with myself. And so I love that, because I feel like most people, when I take, they remind me of that before I leave, like, you know, take this off the mat with you. And that reminder is so nice, because we can take it with us wherever we go. Back to like the community building stuff. Well, I mean, the retreat stuff, because I feel like that's kind of like the first invitation where you recognize the importance of community, because you had that yoga teacher training, which essentially is like being in a retreat, right? Where you're like, you're open and you're vulnerable and you're connecting with these people on a deeper level than we do in the normal day-to-day life, right? Normal day-to-day life, not for you and I now at this stage in life, but certainly back then, I imagine it's very surface level. Before you find yoga and you find deep, connections and community, it's very like, how's this, how's that, it's very like surface level. And then you go into an environment like that, like a retreat, and you connect so deeply with people and have real authentic conversations. It's like you satiate a hunger that you didn't even know that you had. It's my experience of it. I think one of my first, I haven't done yoga teacher training, but I imagine it's like this because I did like a breathwork retreat and I did an ayahuasca ceremony, but it was like a retreat in Peru and I didn't love the ayahuasca part of it. I had some rough experiences, but the retreat part of it, I just remember talking to the people that I went there with and how like I never had a desire for anything outside of what was there. Like, oftentimes in group settings, it's easy to be like, oh, I could really use a glass of wine right now to take the edge off or whatever. And it was the first time, that wasn't an option. I never had the desire for anything because it was like I could retreat to my little room when I needed like my space and privacy. But then I could go at any point, at any hour of any day, I could go like into these common areas and I could connect with these people. And because we were there doing this like deep work, we weren't having these like meaningless conversations. We were like going deep with each other and having very raw, real conversations. And I remember coming back from that and being like, I need more of that in my life. I felt so filled up, not from the drinking of the ayahuasca necessarily, but from just the experience of like living in close quarters with other humans and getting so much social interaction. I don't know about for you, but for me, I had the story coming from my similar background to yours was like, I have to do this all on my own. I have to take care of myself. I often had to take care of others around me, my mom included. And so I was always in charge. I was always at a very young age, like playing a role much older than I was. And that kind of was wonderful because it made me and shaped me into the leader that I am today. And so I gravitate to leadership roles. But when you are there, oftentimes it's very lonely. It's a very lonely feeling, and I would isolate and I wouldn't let people in and I wouldn't trust, anybody because either they'd let me down or they'd leave or whatever, very similar to your story. So it was very lonely. And I didn't even know I was lonely because that was just my normal. I always say this with like the health and wellness world. I'm always like, you don't know that you feel bad until you experience feeling good. And I think it translates into this world too. Like I didn't know that I was lonely until I experienced connection and community. And then I was like, holy crap. I went back to my normal life and I'm like, it's quiet here and lonely here. Like I need more of that. So clearly you were inspired in a similar way. How is it? Because I've been to lots of yoga studios, but just because a yoga studio exists doesn't automatically build community. What's your secret? Because you've built such a great community. I mean, people stop you. I've been out with you and people stop you and they're like, Christina from Astea, like, they're like, I love the community you've built. Like people recognize you for that. You've done such a good job with that. So tell us how that happened.
Yeah, I know when I was going through my journey and unraveling, and I mentioned to you, I felt really dim, and all of a sudden there was this light that was coming. And actually, so Asteya means non-stealing in Hindu, right? And so and it's one of the yogic principles that we learn in teacher training through philosophy. And my interpretation of that has been just through my own journey of if every single one of us has a beautiful light inside of us. It's unique to you. You have yours, I have mine, we all have one. And it's very common for our lights to get dim because insecurity, outside noise, expectation, self-judgment, someone tells you your ideas, whatever it might be, right? And then so we start to close off. And I do believe when we're not sharing our light, we're stealing from ourselves and we're stealing from the world around us. And that has always been the mission of Asteya. When I was stepping into leadership, and I did manage a corporate yoga studio before Asteya, before COVID. And I just remember thinking, if I could give back what the yoga practice has done for me to one other person in my lifetime, I could die happy. And so my mission has always been to like make sure every single person that walks in the door, whether it was at the corporate place I was at, or especially now, is that you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel compelled to share your light, and I think that's so important. And I think it's also stems back to I didn't have that growing up. And so I think I just want to give to everyone else what I never received, because I know what it feels like to be on this end of not feeling loved or not feeling supported or connected really to anything. And so now I think I'm just like over sharing because I'm like, I want everyone to feel that. Because I think just my own transition from like really being, even when Vivian's dad and I separated, there was times where I was like so low, like I really did not want to be here anymore.
Wow.
And there's like having that space and like safety that I have now. Like
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to ever like be where that was,
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Wow. And what a beautiful thing, because that's your light and that's what you're sharing. You're creating a space for people where maybe they might be feeling that way, but then they have a place that they can go and feel that community and feel that connection. You probably save people from feeling that way pretty often.
Yeah, I think when this is pre-Estea, but there was a student who did teacher training, and his dad also took classes, and he was, I think, 1 year out of high school or something. And he didn't tell me anything about his story. I don't know. He was just like the sweetest kid, and he did teacher training. I sponsored his training because I just like really loved the vibe that he had in the studio. And his dad came up to me one day and he said, I don't know if you know this, but like my son used to want to like leave this earth. And he said, he's like, I don't know what you're saying in your class or what you're speaking of. He said, but whatever it is, it's changing my son's life, and like keep doing it. And it was just this moment where I realized how impactful the teacher platform really is. And also we just, again, like we don't know what's going on in anyone's life. Most of us walk out the door and for sake of saving face or not wanting to share, we put on a brave face, and you just never know. So yeah, I can imagine how many people come in the door of Estea that need that 1 hour of just like forgetting what's going on in the outside world, and to allow them to come in and just remember there's like goodness and kindness and like you do matter. This is a time for you to get more acquainted with yourself and like feel like loved, from the inside out. That's such a privilege that I don't take lightly.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I can connect with that so much. I've had a rough couple of years myself. There's been so much that's gone on in my world, professionally and personally with my family, loss and tragedy, and having a place where I can like just go and get away from all that. You do. It's like you almost like taking your coat off at the door and like hanging it up outside. Like, don't worry, it's there waiting for you when you walk out. But you do like there's a sense of just freedom from all of that, from the noise in the outside world and stuff like that. And then there's this a famous quote, I think it was Albert Einstein that said it, but you can't solve your problems at the same level of thinking that created them. And so I love it because it's like, to me, it's not escapism, because there is a lot of that in the spiritual community, like, spiritual escapism, but I don't think it's that. I don't think that's what this is. Like, to me, this is like, I go there and I put my problems to the side and I do something that makes me connect to my truest self. Without all the fears, without all the worries, with all the heaviness of the burdens that I'm and challenges and tribulations that I'm facing. And I get to my true essence of me there. And then when I go back outside and I pick up those challenges again, I see them differently. And oftentimes like creative solutions come through, or new perspectives come through, or I see like the beauty and the perfection of even like the most painful situations, and it's like, because I connect to that deeper part of myself, that true self, I'm able to then shift the way that those things impact me. So I imagine it's kind of like that, like you said, in the teacher trainings and all that stuff, you know?
I think there's a recognition of, I think the more connected you are to self, the more you also realize how connected we are, like on a higher level, to everything else around us, right? So it doesn't it stops becoming so much more, and it sounds counterintuitive because I'm saying connect to self, like, right? But then I think the more that we can unravel and embody like that, we're just a simple human doing the best we can, right? You start to find a deeper compassion and empathy for understanding we're all the same.
Totally.
Right? It's like, we all have our own versions of happiness and problems, and everything's relative because our world is so shaped by our own perceptions and our own experiences, right? But ultimately, like when we all show up to the table, everyone's coming from a different lane, but we've all made it to the table.
Absolutely.
Right. And so there's this, I think you find the reason it becomes more easy to not be so worked up about everything when you're more in tune is because you realize like we are all the same. And ultimately I do believe everyone's doing the best they can. Now I'm sure
absolutely
there's like people that are, right?
yes
But I think at the heart of it, everyone's doing the best they can with the tools they have
Absolutely.
in their current state.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's interesting too. I think it's important to like look at, I often will glorify people that I think are like more spiritually advanced than I am. And a friend of mine shared the story. Literally, I think it was like early this morning. I got this voice memo and I was laughing so hard because I so needed to hear this. I'm rereading for probably like the, I don't know, 15th time, The Surrender Experiment from Michael Singer, which is one of my favorite books. My book club's reading it, so I'm reading it with them so I can lead the conversation on it. And it's been a little while since I've read it, so I'm like, wow, God, he's so amazing. He's so incredible and so easy to like put these spiritual teachers up on a pedestal too, which is not a fair place to put somebody. We do that. I put myself on that sometimes. I'm a leader in the community and I have such high expectations of myself, or I'm a meditator, but then I lose my shit because my son left dishes in the sink, and I'm like, I can be so harsh on myself. I'm like zenned out after my meditation. I walk in, I'm like, what the hell is this? And it's like, and then I like self-judge, and because I think, oh, well, like, there's these spiritual teachers and I want to be at their level and I want to get to this place and I want to glorify that person. And then I was talking to a good friend of mine, Nathan, about this. I sent him some messages about like Michael Singer and how like I want to meet him one day and what have you. And he was like, just a little friendly reminder. He's like, of course, that's a very wonderful goal to have. He was like, but he's also human, And he told me a story about a friend of his who went to go meet him. He went to Gainesville, Florida, to where Michael has his temple, or Mickey, I guess they call him, has his temple. And when he showed up, I guess there was like some work being done on the property and a tree was being moved, and Mickey was not happy with the way that it was being done. And Nathan's words were like, he was losing his shit. And in a weird way, that made me so happy. It was just like, okay, like we're all human.
Yes.
And we're all, like you said, in the moment, doing the best we can with the tools that we have. And I think that gives us permission to give ourselves some grace too. Like even the most spiritual people in the world that I know that have written the most beautiful books and changed my life and perspective so much also are human. Yes. And they also have their moments. And so it's okay if I, occasionally lose my shit about the dishes.
Totally. And actually, I pulled that book off my shelf because from when we met the other day, I was like, I got to reread that. And that resonates with me, just your story, because I do sometimes feel like I'm a fraud,
Right.
Like
imposter syndrome.
Sit in the costume and I teach everyone to like, I have these really profound like stories to share, or I think they're profound, but like I'm trying to translate life stories and like help people like walk out into the world and be like so zen and in your center and just pause and breathe, and then I'll have an experience where I'm like, wow, I'm like completely uninvolved. Like I think my last romantic relationship, there was moments where I was like becoming reactive, and there's like all of these things happen. Of course, relationships with two people are contributing, and it's no one's fault. I'm choosing how I show up. But at the end of the day, I was like, wow, I am so uninvolved. Like I have just like shifted like 20 years back in time. So like my internal self
totally
really had to like take a step back after and like find grace for myself and be like, you're just a human. You're processing things and it doesn't always come out the way that you want it to. But I also think the more that we can call ourselves out on that is where the growth happens. So all these people who are elevated, they've probably come from spaces where they've done a lot of reactionary type,
for sure,
where they've just started. I think the key is calling yourself out
100%,
because there's people who will pretend like
they didn't.
There's like a lack of accountability and stuff. And like when that happens, it's like, of course you're not going to evolve, because if you're not recognizing how you're showing up in a moment, then there's no room for evolution.
Absolutely. And I think that's the goal right there. It's just being radically honest with yourself. I think that takes an incredible amount of strength to look yourself in the mirror honestly. I don't meet many people that like to do that. I think it's a rare trait to have the ability to truly look at yourself and call yourself out and own it, but that's where the real change happens. Because if you can't acknowledge the behavior, if you can't acknowledge where you still have work to do, how can you ever do that work? And so I think it's a beautiful thing. I love when people are real and honest. I laugh when people pretend to be perfect and have it all figured out and all together. Because I'm like, I don't know if you're just trying to fool me or if you're fooling yourself. But either way, it's like, man, if you think you're perfect, you probably have a lot of work still to do. But if you feel like a fraud sometimes, I'm like, congratulations, you're actually closer to enlightenment than the other person pretends to have it all figured out.
It's scary and it's intimidating to look at yourself and recognize that we have flaws, right? Because it's like, I mean, we want to envision that we're showing up no one's perfect, but you know, even when we're doing our best, it's hard to be like, oh wow, I just really F that up, or I didn't come at that from a space I wanted to, or that's not the best version of me, you know. So it is hard to sit in a space of calling yourself out.
Totally.
And it does take a lot of strength to sit there.
And partnerships have a way of doing that. And so do kids, of course. But I know I was talking to one of my best friends, is my personal trainer, because I see him more consistently than anyone else. For like 10 years, I see him like 3 times a week. So we're always gabbing about all the different things. And I remember having this conversation with him one time, like, I'm so much better when I'm single. Like, you know, when I'm single, I'm like so spiritual, I'm growing, and I'm just in such a good place. And I was like, you know, maybe I'm just meant to be single. And he's like, Nastasha, you don't get better at playing football by sitting on the sidelines. Like, that's the whole point. You know, it's like you're staying safe by staying single. It's like going to the relationship. It triggers all those old attachment wounds. And that's where the work is. And I feel the same way about children. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but my children have been my best teachers, you know, on this planet, as well as my ex-partners. I have to really be honest with myself and work on myself. And I've had some of the best growth in my life by looking myself in the face after having conflict with my kids, you know, about sometimes really silly things and sometimes like some big moments, you know, but I've had so much growth through that. And it's amazing how we can use anything as fuel for our growth, even difficult partnerships, you know. Sometimes the growth comes in the leaving, you know, and having boundaries and self-love. And sometimes the growth comes in staying and digging our heels in. And it obviously depends on the situation. But I think that we can literally use anything, even the guy cutting us off on the freeway and then flipping us off. You know, it's like that's a great opportunity for your practice.
I think you can find yoga in anything.
I love that.
Ultimately anything, like any experience you have, or at least for me, I can turn it into like something, you know. But for sure my daughter, or both my kids, but I think because, you know, my son's older, like your daughter, so he's gone, he's in Florida now, and so we're little. I've actually, this is like off subject, but it's interesting from a parental perspective, you know, like I basically was a baby raising a baby with him, you know, so we have a very, very close relationship. And I felt like when he was here, I always knew what was going on, you know, because he was here. And now it's like I only get glimpses into his life that he wants to share. And it's like part of that adulthood of like, okay, he's 24 now, he's out in the world. And like, but it's been a hard adjustment for me. I'm like calling, like, what's going on? Do you have a girlfriend? What are those? Okay, mom, chill. But and so even in that, I can find yoga of like the non-attachment, like letting go and stuff like that, right? But I find having Vivian at home, there's so many experience. I think a lot of it too, from a parent, you want to do better than what you had, right? And so I find myself overcompensating sometimes, or I need to like take a step back and be like, this is not my journey over again. This is hers. And like, I don't need to shape her path in the way that I think it needs to go. I just need to be very supportive of where she's kind of going and be like by her side instead of like holding her hand in front. You know, and that's like a really hard
it is
to do too. Trying too much sometimes that I can only do the best I can. And like, I have to like let her be her own person.
Totally. I think it's such a good reminder. We birth these children and then we kind of think they're ours, you know, to shape and mold. But it's like really they kind of come, and we had this conversation the other day a little bit, is it nature or nurture? And I think we kind of come in wired the way that we are, you know, to some degree. Certainly like look at how you grew up and how I grew up, and then who we are, it kind of doesn't really make sense, right? It's like we kind of came in wired a certain way. And I'm sure there's some nurture that goes on as well. But for the most part, I think like we're here with our own unique gifts, like you said earlier, our own unique light. We're here for our own unique purpose and path. And I think especially for somebody who's in, you know, in the community in a leadership role, I think it can be very easy. Like I would want my kids to be a reflection of me. So I'd be mortified if like people saw my children like driving through McDonald's. I'm like, oh, it's like the worst thing in the world. Like, do you know who I am? Like, you can't go there. What are you doing? But I've had to let go and release that. They are who they are, and get to make their own choices. Of course, as a mom, I got to choose to feed them the way that I fed them. But, you know, as they got older and became on their own, my older two, they had cars. As soon as they had cars, they're like, yeah, fast food. Mom would never let us have this.
Like, we're going to all the places she said
yes,
no.
Exactly. It's like, that's how do you rebel against a, you know, healthy mom, right? But, you know, they find their way back, I think, you know, to a balance, whatever that looks like for them. But still, like, I would I made it like it was about me. Like it was a reflection of me if they did this thing. So I needed them to behave a certain way so that I could look like I was a good mom. And I had to let go of all that stuff and let them have their own path and their own journey and their own choices. My daughter now is having a baby of her own. And even in that, like how she's choosing to her plan for her labor and her pregnancy, that's her journey and that's her path. And I can obviously be there and be supportive and whatever, but it's her own, she's on hers now, her journey. It's not mine. She's not mine. She doesn't belong to me. She's not, necessarily a reflection of me. She's a reflection of her own unique individual on her own unique path. And so I have to remind myself of that a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about being a parent. But you're right, like they are like ours, right? Like, I birthed you.
Yeah.
Like I brought you into this world.
Right? You owe me. Yeah. And beyond, like, right, the investment that goes into that, like all the late nights and the holding the hair while they were sick or the, driving to the different sports and all the things, especially as a single mom, it can be a thankless job, but still it's like, that doesn't mean they owe us, but I do use that often. Take the trash out. I gave birth to you.
I'm really intentional about like not saying because I said so, right? That's because good. I remember when I was growing up, that would drive me nuts because it's like I get it, but like why? Like kids are so curious. So that is one thing I've always worked on. Like I refuse to say I said so.
Oh, good for you.
Like I'll explain, and then if when they're little and they're like why?
Yes.
I'm like, okay, we've gotten to the why. Now it's time to just go deal.
Yes. Yes.
It was like one thing that I was like, okay, I can't as a parent just be like, I said so.
I could work on that. With Cora, oftentimes it's like she is not actually asking why to know why. She's just testing my authority or delaying the inevitable. And so she has these tactics and I'll just be like, because I said, or they'll be like, what's for dinner? I'm like, especially if I know they're not going to be happy about what I made. I'm like, it's food. That's what's for dinner. No. I could work on that a little bit.
Parenting is like I would never change it for the world.
I gosh,
and I totally respect people that don't want to ever have children, but I can say like, it is the greatest gift that I've ever had. And it's what a like beautiful experience to be able to like bring another life into this planet and then watch it grow. And, and like, as you said, it is nature. I think, it's like when you have multiple kids and they're all different. It's like, you're like, okay, same parent, right? But what's going on?
Same environment.
But they're all, it's like really cool to watch them as babies and then their personalities start to show up and you're just like, I don't know what I'm going to get. It's like one of those little boxes.
Yes, a surprise. It totally is. Yes.
No idea what's coming out.
Right.
But as they get older and older, their little personalities start to pop out. And wow.
And you see like
really cool.
What's special to them. It's been, I shifted that perspective later in my parenting career, early in life. Again, it was like, oh, you should be like this and you should be doing this. And then later in life, as I grew as a human and developed myself and dove into my spiritual path, I became more like, oh, you're your own, and so watching them then evolve into their own little people, like my son, like he became a musician and he's just like, such an incredible musician and he's so talented. And I'm just like in amazement of him, and I could have been like, no, you need to stay in jujitsu or you need to, I could have tried to force him into the things that I thought he should be doing. And then he finds his path and it's so cool. That's just who they were meant to be. And so, we just get out of the way a little bit.
And then you can kind of see like yourself in them sometimes, right? Like sometimes Vivian will do something and I'm so frustrated. I'm like, wow, she like, it literally, it's just like me right now.
Oh yeah. Cora's my mini me. I think that's why we like toe to toe.
But it's like, it's like you want to be mad, but you're like, oh, well, you definitely got that for me. So how do I handle this?
Yes. She'll call me out on the funniest things, not to get too far in the weeds, but like when she has a way of getting me like animated, like frustrated, I'll say something. And for some reason, when I'm in that mode of like frustration or like high anxiety, I'll like start saying things the wrong way or I'll say something weird and she'll just like, she'll know what I mean, but she'll call me out and she'll be like, what? Put my what on? She's just like, and I'm like, you know what I mean? She's just like,
oh, they know.
But I'm just like that. I am just like that. Like if I was in a little friction with a partner, I'd like pick apart any little, just to like get under the skin. I'm like, yep, she's my child, 100%. Yeah.
It's funny. It's cute though.
It's
endearing in a way.
It is. It's fun. Sometimes I laugh at it. Other times I'm like, this is my karma. Yeah, for sure. I want to hear a little bit about some of these community events that you've been doing, because I think that is so cool. You work with these nonprofits and you put on these huge events. You had one this past weekend at Viore headquarters. I think like 160 people came and you raised money for an incredible cause. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have just been so enamored with our community and so grateful for people supporting us. And for the last year or so, my mission has really been to like give back. And how do we do that, and what would be like the most impactful? And I don't want to fall into a box of being a yoga studio, because I feel like that limits our community, right? Like if people don't practice yoga, I don't want them to feel like they don't belong in our community. So the goal is to really, especially in 2026, to like get out as much as we can. Yeah, the event had yoga for sure, but there was like a different element to it. It was outdoors. There was a DJ. There was an after party. We brought in a bunch of people from the community. So I think 20 or so vendors that came in that were all local. I really want to continue to support our local community.
Yeah.
There's so many talented, beautiful businesses and people that are doing so much cool stuff that, like, even as we've been exploring vendors, I've been finding people that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you existed, right? Or different things. So it's been cool to kind of nurture the community in a more vast sense. Like, again, if you don't come to the studio, it doesn't mean you're not a part of a stay. I want us to be this overall, just more of an imprint in the greater community of just allowing everyone to feel connected in some way, shape, or form, you know? So even on Saturday, we really encourage, after, like, introduce yourself to someone you don't know, make friends. And we didn't do the raffle until the end so that people couldn't leave. You had to be present to win. Yeah, and I like little things here and there, but like just really trying to encourage. I mean, it's like you have 160 people of like-minded people that are all there, that have probably passed each other somewhere along the lines, because the community, although it's big, it's like pretty small, you know? And so just bringing them all together and having a chance for people to meet each other, to me, is so important.
I love that.
You know? So that's the goal for 2026, is to continuously do outside stuff that will enable people to feel part of the bigger community, not just like the yoga specific community.
Exactly. Okay, how can people find you and learn more about what you're up to and what A Stay is up to?
Our Instagram page is good. We'll always run the stuff on there, and then the website will always have the big events on the website too. So that's just astea.live.
Okay.
And then our Instagram handle is astea.collective.
Amazing. And I know you do a lot of retreats too. Do you have any retreats coming up?
I do. May 20th, I have Lake Como. And then I'm finalizing the dates, but the end of September, the south of France.
Dang. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Places you want to go. Oh my gosh, yeah, I know. I need to get into the retreat space.
Well, it's fun. I mean, last year we did Mallorca.
My gosh, I saw that one. I was so envious. I wanted to go so bad.
Yeah, and then Kirsty, who you love.
I do. I love Kirsty.
She's moving pretty soon. So
I know. So sad. We love you, Kirsty. Love you. Come visit us.
But her and I did Bali, so we've been all over the place, and it's really cool.
That's
it's
so
fun.
exciting.
And there is something special about a retreat container.
Totally. Totally. Okay. So are your retreats, they're yoga retreats. It's not teacher training. You also do teacher trainings, but your retreats are just like if you want to go do some yoga and explore a cool place and connect with other humans, right? Okay, cool. And all that's available on the website as well. And then I imagine you probably promote it on social medias.
We do. We'll do both. Okay. Yes. And then the teacher trainings also, we do that twice a year.
Okay.
The 200-hour. And there's one starting soon in February, but those are also on the website. So you can see just what they entail and the information that they consist of, because every teacher training is different. I always tell people, you get to know like what is it that you want to take from the teacher training before you join one.
Yeah,
they're all different. There's so many different facets of yoga and ways to translate it, that all the trainings, even though they're all 200-hour, they're all very different.
Okay. And the last thing I want to ask is, if someone is listening right now and they're in a place that you mentioned you were before, where you weren't sure if you wanted to be around, you were going through a really hard time. And I think if you've been alive long enough, you've probably had a moment like that in your life. So what would you say to that person? What advice would you give to them?
That's a good question. I think I would tell you to literally take it one moment at a time. It's really easy to, like, especially when we're in that dark space, it's like everything feels heavy and everything feels daunting, and pulling yourself out of the valley feels like this mountainside is so steep that it's just like insurmountable. And so there has to be like little wins every day to start to build your confidence, like little tiny commitments that you can make to yourself of like, today I'm going to get out of bed. I mean, I'm telling you, like, those were some days where I just have to be like, today I'm going to like go from my bed to the couch. and like, I mean, granted, I at the time had 2 kids, and I remember my son looked at me and he was like, you've, because again, I had him very young, and he knows I did that by myself, but he was like, you've done this before, you can do it again.
Wow.
So like I had that, and that really like shifted something for me. But there was still times where, if you don't have that, you had like holding yourself accountable gives you start to build your trust in yourself back. You start to build confidence in yourself back, but it has to be tiny wins. Because when we're trying to, get to here and we're forgetting that there's like tiny steps all the way, it's not just like one big leap, then we can become like overwhelming.
Of course.
And so you just want to keep like shrinking.
I love that. It reminds me of like somebody training for a marathon. You're not going to go out and run, 21 miles on the first day, right? Or, 15 miles even, right? You're going to start probably with like 2 miles or even a mile, whatever it is, wherever you're at. But you're going to start somewhere very small and slowly work your way up. And if you think about the end goal, I've only ever done half marathons, but I remember it was so daunting, the thought of running 13 miles. And I was like, I could never do that. It's impossible, right? Why would I even start? Why would I even try? But it's like, I got a training schedule and I looked at it and I was like, oh, day 1, I only have to run 1 mile. Okay. I can run 1 mile. I can do 1 mile. Right. So it's like you start with the little steps, and little by little you look back and you're like, wow, look how far I've come.
Yeah. And I think if I could add like one more to that, it would just to remember that you're not alone. Like I think when we are going through stuff, it's very easy to isolate and to feel lonely.
Yeah.
But everybody, there's someone out there that loves you.
Totally.
And you have to be able to like lean in and be honest with what's going on and like get it out of your system and share it with someone. Because when we're holding it all in that isolation, that loneliness, it can even cause us to be even more like recluse.
Totally. And I'll add to that as well. Go help someone. Go help someone that's in a worse position than you. I went on a house build 2 weekends ago. I go a couple times a year down to Mexico. We build homes in the migrant camps in Mariadero. And I was in a really weird place, 2 weeks ago. I've had a lot of like just been battered this last year with things, both professionally. I closed a store that I've never had to do that before. One of my locations wasn't working out, and it was a painful experience, like having to go through that and do that. And we lost a family member and just had a lot going on. And it's felt very heavy for a few months, just so heavy. And honestly, if I didn't have kids, sometimes I don't know if I would have gotten through some hard times in my life, because I do feel like they've kept me going. But I go down there and I'm in service to this family. And we built this house. We did a double build. We built 2 houses. So 2 families in need got homes. And I worked my ass off. I put an entire roof on a house one day. Like I was up on the roof the whole day. It was hard labor, but it's like it got me out of my own not selfish, that's not fair to say, but like self-focused, when it got me into being in service to other people. And it really shifted my perspective. So I think that is also helpful when we're in that situation, right? Like getting the focus off of ourselves, go help someone in need,
Yeah. Well, one of the Japanese philosophies is for their kids is, which I found this, I just read this the other day and I thought it was like so interesting. But when they're kids, it's not about like finding your purpose. They tell you go out and see how you can serve others. Ooh. And so that you will naturally find your purpose when you're giving back to other people. And that's how they communicate in the language they use with their children as they're growing up. It's not about like, you need to, because here we're so like, find your purpose. And you're like, I don't know.
What am I supposed to do?
I don't know what my purpose is. Like I'm 17 going to college. I have no idea what I'm doing. Exactly. I don't even know who I am. Right. Yeah. But I just thought that was so fascinating that to them, it's like, don't worry about you. And like needing to find your purpose, get out there and go serve other people, and your purpose will find you. Wow. Because you'll naturally start to gravitate towards the things that like make you happy. And typically, I mean, I think we all know this, but when you're in service of other people, like it is not selfish in a way, but obviously gives us something back, right? But it's like this beautiful little circle of like, I'm giving, and then it fulfills me. And so now I'm full, and now I can give more. And it's like this beautiful little like loop, which I think is amazing. But
it is. Thank you for sharing that. What a great spot to end on. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It was so fun.
Thank you for having me. I love this.
Me too. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support this show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha McKeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at The Choice Juicery, Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.